been running independent alternative events for over 20 years. Join me and my guests as we share stories and insights into our times working in the unpredictable world of producing events. My guest was responsible for some of the most legendary electro clash gigs in Perth throughout the early 2000s in the alternative music scene. He's a DJ, producer, composer, and sound artist. And best of all, he's one of the nicest guys I know. Petro Vouris, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks. Cheers, Ivan. Thanks
no
for
worries,
having me.
Mate. Glad you could make it.
I'm glad I could make it.
This show is all about events, and you've been running events for a long time. And so let's delve into your history. And with everyone, we start with where'd you grow up and where'd you go to school?
Well, I came here when I was a kid with my parents, when I was like 3 years old, and grew up in Balga. Went to Warrapendi Primary School and then went to Balga High.
Cool. I remember Balga back in the day. It was quite a notorious place to live.
It was, especially back then. Yeah, not the most... Well, I had some good experiences growing up there, but I also had some terrifying experiences as well. But,
there was that cluster, Balga, Girraween, Kandoola, Mirrabooka.
Yeah.
It was all very low socio-demographic area.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to know the right people to walk around there, or visit people and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it had a bad rep. So how did that affect you as a kid?
Well, I guess it taught me that if you're weird enough, then you tend to be left alone, or beaten up.
Or beaten up.
I learned both.
Yeah.
It kind of, I guess, it kind of taught me to sort of, watch my back, I guess, which isn't the best of skills, but it can be.
How was, I'm, a bit like, I'm Italian, and my family moved over here from Italy, and my English wasn't 100% growing up in school. Were you speaking clear English by that time?
Well, my English wasn't that great because I was speaking Greek at home, but it got better after the first couple of years. Obviously, being young, you kind of pick up languages reasonably quickly, and but yeah, it was tough because there weren't many Wog boys at my school.
No, I was the only Italian in my school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, everyone was predominantly white Australian. So my best mate was an Aboriginal fellow.
Yeah.
And then later an English fellow and a Kiwi fellow.
Yeah.
And so, this little gang of diversity sort of stuck together.
Yeah, I found that as well, actually. My group of friends were kind of like the odd bunch that didn't stick into being the sort of typical Australian, or we were just quite a mix of kids, from different places, ethnicities and cultures, and I think that was quite interesting. Learned a lot that way, I think, rather than being sort of in a homogenized kind of environment, and made some good friends growing up. Yeah. I think, there's always some great moments in childhood. There can be some tough moments as well, but...
Australia was a pretty racist place back then.
There was a fair bit of racism.
Well, everyone was, predominantly white Australian.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I met my neighbourhood gang were all Aussies,
Yeah.
you know. And, well, if you want to talk about racism, I was an Italian kid that literally grew up with a family of Aboriginal people because my home life was quite broken. And so they took me in, you know, and regarded me as a Wagorigine.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So if that doesn't break down barriers, I don't know what does, you know?
Yeah. Well, my dad always, you know, I guess he kind of felt a connection with a lot of Indigenous people in our neighborhood because I guess they would ask him if he's English, if he's British or English, and he'd say no, and they'd give him the thumbs up.
Yeah.
And you know, and also, you know, just, you know, fellow minorities, I guess, people that aren't sort of the mainstream.
Yeah, underdogs, you know?
Tend to sort of empathize and understand each other a bit. You know, coming from different sort of experiences and cultures, of course, but you know, when you're the sort of the odd one out of the mainstream, then you understand what you're dealing with culturally, and you understand some of the hurdles, not all, of course, because you know, Indigenous people in Australia had it harder than anyone.
Oh, absolutely. I learnt about the Indigenous plight at a very early age with my Indigenous family. And so, you know, I learnt a lot about all that stuff at an early age, and then I had to go hang out with people who are completely fucking ignorant of it. Yeah. And, you know, I had this sort of, I had black friends and white friends, you know. And my mate Dan was same age. He was born, I think his birthday was a day before or after mine. I think I was the oldest of a day. And then we decided to have combined 21st birthday parties. And it was a nightmare. Because all my sort of white privileged friends came into, we had it at Dan's place, and then like all the black fellas just run amok. Just ran amok and scared all the white fellas away. You know, but that was my first and only attempt of bringing two races together. Just but so that's the kind of vibe you grew up with. And so, what were your early creative influences? I mean, what kind of music was being played in the house growing up?
A lot of Greek music, a lot of Greek folk music, especially from Petros in Greece, where my dad's from. They've got their own sort of style of music, which I still listen to, and I generally love, you know, Greek folk music. But my sort of contemporary influences came about. Well, I got into Frank Zappa when I was young. That kind of led me on to sort of, also a bit of influence from hanging out with my friend Megan Michael and listening to his older brother's music. That was Basil, who some people might know from Sonic. Introduced me to Mr. Bungle, which inspired Mega Mike and I to start our first band, which was Elvis Penis.
Elvis Penis.
Yes.
One of the best band names of all time. And it rhymes.
Yeah, it's true. Rhymes.
Tell me about Elvis Penis.
Well, I guess it was kind of us wanting to do experimental kind of music, inspired by Mr. Bungle and Frank Zappa and you know, all kinds of stuff. Acid house, Detroit techno, electro, death metal, like Carcass and
pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, we're into all kinds of stuff. We're listening to all kinds of music, and a lot of John Zorn stuff as well, and I had just started reading about John Cage, and this is when we were, I think, 15 or 16 years old, and we did our first recording in Mega Mike's shed, his parents' shed, tiny little shed, and we just had like a 606 drum machine, guitar effects pedals, microphone, a crappy I think it was a Casio keyboard, and we were just running things through the effects, and had his dog Ari, rest in peace Ari, who was one of the first members of the band. He was a little pit bull, and he did vocals.
The dog?
The dog was the main vocalist. He was the first main vocalist, and when he passed away, I had to cover reluctantly, because it was the big pause to fill. And
Unintended.
Yeah, and yeah, that's how the band started. We did our first recording, which is about the donut Earth, where there's a hole in the middle, and humans try to reach the center of the Earth, but they just keep going round and round in circles,
Falling through the hole.
Yep.
Oh, nice. I saw an Elvis Penis gig at HQ one night.
Yeah, we did a couple there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember being there one night and you were on and you had a mask on. And everyone was masked.
Yeah, we all wore masks.
Yeah.
I was wearing the Elvis mask
That's right.
and wore the Evel Knievel outfit,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
the Stars and Stripes.
Yeah. I don't remember what it sounded like, but I do remember what it looked like.
Yeah, a lot of people remember covering their ears and remembering what we looked like. And they were still booing the band that was on before us when we got off. And, but yeah, no.
I remember
liked us.
it being quite, unique and crazy, chaotic, and but I don't remember. It's the only band that stood out for me that night. I couldn't tell you who else played, but I know Elvis Penis played.
That was our goal,
Yeah,
pretty much.
mission
To be
accomplished.
Memorable. Yeah.
And so, what happened after that? I mean, sounds like that was the springboard for you.
Yeah, that was the first kind of group. I had a Tascam 4-track where I continued sort of experimenting with. I also had a tape splicer, which I can't remember where I ordered it. I actually got it made up to splice cassette tape, and I bought my first synth because prior to that I started playing bass, but I didn't keep it up. I found a synthesizer for, I think it was 150 at the time. It was a mini Korg. Now this is like not a micro Korg, a mini Korg from 1973, and I picked that up and I plugged it into my bass amp, and the first sound that came through, just like I fell in love with synthesizers. It was quite a moving experience. Yeah, so I guess that's where sort of beginnings of music came from. A lot of influences from visual arts as well. Prior to getting into music, I was really into visual arts, and I think sort of I got into sort of Brian Eno and stuff like that. That sort of cross section between art and sound, I guess. Yeah, I was never good at either. I kind of combined both, and yeah, just experimented, see what I came up with. Yeah.
And of course, you were DJing.
Yeah, well, got into DJing more out of necessity originally, because we started doing Bourgeois Bogan. We started doing events under the name Bourgeois Bogan because during uni, where I studied at Popper and met Josh McAuliffe and Ben Liverman, and we decided to start a record label, and I had this idea with Silky Crusher. The concept was that I wanted to go into pop music and create a fictional pop star and base a record label around it. And so I got my friends into this music that I was getting into, and at the time I called it electro rock, but everyone would probably know that genre more as electro clash. Yeah, so we started doing events, and that's where it sort of started.
What was the creative inspiration behind calling the company Bourgeois Bogans?
Because I think I kind of joked, I can't remember to who at what time, whether it was my lecture or someone. It had something to do with me coming from Balga, I guess, and being a bit of a bogan, and
Okay.
sort of prior to starting Bourgeois Bogan, I'd been doing a lot of experimental music nights at sort of Club Zoo and Totally Huge Music Festival, and all that sort of highbrow experimental kind of artsy kind of music, and I kind of saw it as a kind of a bit of a joke at myself, kind of saying that sort of a bit of a bogue and a bit bourgeois sort of.
Yeah, I suppose the word bourgeois is upper class.
Upper class.
And Bogan's lower class, so
yeah.
I suppose it would be like a balance between the two.
Yeah, it was kind of the upper middle class kind of, and then the lower class, the mix between the two, but it's kind of like a piss take at the two as well. It's kind of a bit sort of humorous.
I liked it, and I remember you had was it like a crest or something, like a logo?
Yeah, that was the first logo. It was a crest, I think, of like a guitar and.
Was it guitar, a mic?
Yeah, I can't even remember that. That's
banana
good that you remember.
Something.
Something's random, but yeah, it was all fun, and I think the motivation was that at the time, before that, I was doing sort of experimental music, and they would tend to really hate experimental music. Really hated sort of the pop music commercial scene. So in a way I was kind of rebelling against that and decided to do something really poppy and really superficial, because I saw it as interesting from an artistic perspective that pop music is a three-dimensional art form where you have the sort of visual elements, you have the sound, you can incorporate all kinds of other art genres within that as well, performance. So I saw it as more of a sort of three-dimensional genre to play with, coming from, I guess, experimental music background, incorporated some of those elements in the music and played around with sort of pop structures and genre blending. So my band was created a genre called electrobilly, which was a combination of electro and rockabilly.
Oh wow!
And it was just sort of a way of sort of playing with ideas. I was really into sort of cross-sectional sort of combining different ideas that are really contrasting and clashing them together and seeing what comes out of that creatively.
Well, it's the same with that genre, electro swing now.
Right,
I think when electronic music came out, it gave people an opportunity to do that kind of thing as well,
Yeah. Well, especially now, because you're not limited by what you can do sonically, like with laptops. Anyone can get a laptop these days almost.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't matter what program you start off with. There's lots of free programs. And, the only thing holding you back is your creativity. But, and also don't get bogged down in all the parameters, because I think we have almost too much choice, and sometimes some limitations are good as well.
I think so too. The amount of choice these days.
Yeah.
But the thing that I see I'm out of the loop with electronic music scenes these days, but I do see online that there's some things happening. But I think it's funny how electronic music has become so mainstream that I don't know if I'm in a cafe or a nightclub. Sometimes, I'll walk into a cafe and there's hardcore techno going on.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, this is not the place for this kind of music.
Yeah.
But it's not even that. It's not even that. The people who the cafe doesn't even know what's going to be going on. It's just switch on music play. And it does what it does, and no one cares about it because it's just generic now, And now you've got like 24/7 radio stations just programming electronic music with just a thump behind it,
Yeah, that's right. It becomes elevated music, I guess.
And it's just the origins of electronic music were quite anti-establishment. They're quite rebellious. The acid scene and all that.
Yeah.
And now people use it to create atmosphere in their shop.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Or it's not even like there's no strategy or anything.
Yeah.
Like you just walk in anywhere and there's going on.
I think it's based on familiarity, because when something is familiar enough to you, then it becomes safe. And that's not always a bad thing, but I think it's kind of when something becomes mainstream or acceptable, then it can be used in that way. And I guess repetitive music is similar to ambient music in a way that it can be sort of background music in a way.
It's just so sort of like, I don't know, it just means shit,
Yeah.
Like listening to it in I don't know, a shopping centre or something like that. Like,
it can ruin. Yeah, I know what you mean. It sort of takes the magic away.
For it's taking the piss, really.
Yeah.
But I don't know why we need dance music in shopping centres. Like, there's no one's fucking dancing anyway, you know? And, I mean...
Though I still haven't heard any underground resistance or any kind of, like, real kind of, like, underground techno. Like, you kind of hear the sort of... I don't know. The more sort of Germanic kind of...
It's generic. It's a generic kind of thing,
Yeah.
But the fact that you can just log on to a streaming channel and just like hours and hours
and hours of techno. Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like I actually find techno, repetitive techno, quite relaxing, and I've had friends ask me if I find it annoying sort of the repetition, but I find repetition quite soothing in some ways, and maybe that's kind of like a bit of an ADHD thing.
Sure.
But like, that my brain kind of clings onto sort of repetitive kind of things, but I kind of find it almost like a mantra, kind of hypnotic.
It depends on the song or the track.
Well, as long as it's not something cheesy or horrible, like obviously, like quite often I listen to D-Jack's Upbeats or Underground Resistance and some early sort of Chicago stuff, but like mainly a lot of sort of real minimal, like not like sort of later minimal, not like sort of the sort of but early kind of, when I say minimal, kind of Detroit techno, stuff like that I find quite interesting, because sonically they have something to sort of latch onto. Like in a form of texture. Like I really like sort of music that has this kind of textural element where there's synthesis and there's kind of atmosphere going on. So that even though there's repetition, which, you know, is the relaxing part, there's something for the mind to latch on as far as like there's kind of this physical form of the sound.
Well, that's when
textural.
Sounds like it's like that kind of music is produced for a purpose, you know, for a musical purpose.
Yeah.
You know, I think my gripe is with just generic techno music for any occasion, you know, that kind of thing. For me, you know, I still listen to electronic music, but I still listen to all sorts of stuff as well. But walking into, you know, just a really bleh kind of place and hearing house, I have to leave. Yeah. You know, it's like this isn't just I can't ignore it.
Yeah.
I actually look for places to go, like especially cafes that don't sound like nightclubs, because it's just fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think you know, even, you know, like train stations and people, you know, things like that. It's like, well, why don't we just play classical music? Like, it's all public domain. Yeah. No one's getting into any royalties. It's free. Just run some classical music. Like, you can run classical music to forever. You know,
they could.
And it's nice music. You know, you can pick and choose.
I remember they started doing that originally at Perth train station. I heard some classical music, and I think they were doing it more to sort of soothe the wild. What they probably thought were the wild beasts of Northbridge, you know, where people would come in drunk and rowdy, and they think that the classical music was going to soothe their soul or something.
Yeah. But, there's this really ridiculous, and I remember when clubs in Northbridge started putting speakers outside and competing with other clubs, and they would just turn up, turn up their bang and doof music more than the other club next door with the bang and doof music, and all of a sudden you just had all this fucking this throbbing shit going on because it became a marketing strategy, you know.
Throbbing Northbridge, throbbing veins of Northbridge. Yeah,
but let's keep talking about Bourgeois Bogans, because when you established that company, you put on some pretty cool gigs. What are the? I mean, there was the prom.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the prom and how that came up.
Well, we wanted to do theme nights. Our very first theme night was actually Countdown, and Ben, Josh, and I kind of came up with the idea because we grew up with, you know, that influence, obviously, Countdown when we were kids, but
legendary show. Yeah.
Thought that you know, having a theme would enable people to be part of the show, and that's what we wanted. Bourgeois Bogan, we wanted people to be part of the gang, part of the experience, and not as just observers or, you know,
interactive.
We wanted the people that were coming to our events to be part of the event itself. So we wanted people to dress up and be part of the show. So that was the best way to do it, was through theme nights, and it enabled us to sort of use our visual arts skills in, especially, you know, working with 7 Day Weekend, which were one of the bands, and they were all from a visual arts background. Working also with Melissa Vincent, who was part of Bourgeois Bogan, my partner at the time, who did all the fashion, and we did up the spaces. Melissa worked on the outfits for the bands, and it was pretty much an installation, and all the performers were the audience and the bands as well. And the prom was, I think, the second event, if I remember.
What was the first one?
The first one was Countdown.
Oh, Countdown, yeah.
And then the prom. And I guess, That was our
There was a few
favorite.
proms.
There was a few proms, yeah. That was our most successful.
And they were mainly held at the bakery, I think.
That's right. It was held at the bakery. And we did do one on the rooftop, part of Fringe. And most of them were held at the bakery. And they were huge success. They were big nights. And so we continued doing them. I can't remember what number we got up to, 5 or something. But we loved them. People loved them. People loved getting dressed up for it. The first one, we kind of got the word out by getting all the Bourgeois Bogan crew, or the people that were part of the bands, together and made up some T-shirts saying, "Do you have a date for the prom?" with a question mark, and got people to dress up sort of 50s prom style and get the word out. And yeah, it was kind of a big sort of propelling kind of event for Bourgeois Bogan, and it continued with lots of other sort of themed nights. We also did Alice in Wonderland, and we also did Rock and Wrestle, which was one of my favourites, which was with the wrestlers.
That's right.
I
went to that one.
Yeah, we had a stage for the band and also a wrestling ring.
Yeah.
For real wrestlers. And
was that Extreme Power Wrestling, the local guys? I want to say
yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
I don't think there were any other wrestlers doing anything like that around then either. So
yeah, Josh and I got involved in the end as managers, and got into some beef with the wrestlers, and
had him on the ropes.
Yeah, Josh got put on the ropes, and he just barely got out with his testicles. It was a good night. I'm surprised Trump wasn't there. It was, it was a very grand night, full of superstars, full of rock and rollers and high rollers, and
I just have like this small memory of it. I remember the 2 stages. I was probably like there for most. There's so many nights at the bakery.
Yeah,
that they all blend in.
They do.
Yeah, but I do remember the rock and roll wrestling prom, and I'm pretty sure I remember going and seeing the wrestlers and stuff. But that event, the prom, was just really popular. It pretty much sold out every time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it did. It was a success, and we didn't know there was such a big market for such events, and it really took off. When we first started, the motivation was just to create events that our bands could play at, because at the time there was nowhere for us to play that kind of music that we were doing.
Yeah.
So in a way, putting on events was the only way we could get our bands to have gigs, because if we didn't do it, no one was going to invite our weird, silly bands to play at their event, especially back then, because it was such a totally different scene in Perth.
We were lucky that we had the bakery.
Yeah, and
the bakery gave us a license to do whatever we liked.
That's right. Well, not any other venue would have allowed us to transform the venue the way we did visually. Like I remember Alice in Wonderland, we had a kind of almost sort of like a womb entry into the bakery. It was kind of this inflatable tunnel that led into this room full of mattresses, and Alice was sitting at the top of the mattresses, like really high up, and so people would go through this inflatable tunnel and then come out the other side and be sort of a bit disorientated and be in this totally different space of the bakery. And we did lots of other things, like making a massive table for Alice in Wonderland, where we had the Mad Hatter, Scott Patrick, Michael, who played the Mad Hatter, and we had Thomas Ford. Yeah, a lot of just all our friends, you know, people we knew, people we loved, and people that we thought were creatively awesome, and we involved them in Bourgeois Bogan, and it was just a way of us creating something by working together, because I just found like some of the best things I've done has always been sort of collaborating and working with other people, because you know, everyone has something to bring to the table.
Yeah, those were great gigs. I remember a gig where you had a band called Vanshee.
Right, yeah,
play.
Vanshee played. I don't know if people remember Vanshee, a big band from Sydney. They were signed to Modular, and it was...
I'd never heard them before, and then my first experience was seeing them live at the Bakery.
They were great live, yeah.
Oh, what a great band.
Yeah.
And I remember being right up the back, standing on a bench or something, and just seeing, there wasn't a mosh pit, but it was this groove that everyone just had this sort of groove going on.
Right.
I could just see these heads. This this wave.
It was probably during their popular song Kelly or something.
I don't know, but the vibe was just fantastic.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the thing, when everyone dresses up together for a theme and everyone gets into sort of character, people become more comfortable, and the social awkwardness kind of
it sort of
goes away.
Prompts unity.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's inclusive, you know. It's, Did you also book the presets once?
Yeah, we had the presets play a couple of times. And this is when they were just starting out. We had a big night at the Bakery.
I remember that first gig.
And that was the sex-themed one.
Yeah, that's right. What the fuck was that about?
Wow, I've got sort of vague memories. But that was huge. And it wasn't just because of because the presets were just starting to make a name for themselves at the time. It was I think it was the closing party for Fringe.
It might have been.
And they asked us to put it on, and we got the presets.
Yeah.
And it was a huge night. We had, I think it was, that was Moscow Disco. Okay. So we had the presets play, and then it was sold out. It was a huge night. And then the next day we had the presets play in Frio. I can't remember the name of the venue now. But they played with my band, Silky Crusher, and we had hardly no one turn up. And this is the presets. Like in Fremantle.
Yeah. Well, Frio's a different beast.
Different beast, but also it was just like this is before they became huge, and then they became huge after that, and then we had them come over and play as DJ sets. We had a pretty good relationship with Modular. In fact, we brought a lot of their artists over just before they really broke out, and it was because it was such an early stage of that style of music. These bands were just sort of, just testing the ground at the time and starting to make a name. Like we had, apart from Vanshee and the presets, we had Muscles as well. Just before he broke out, we had his first gig with us at the Bakery, and then, after that, not long after that, I'd like, I always used to say with Josh that, that we were the lucky charm that, not long after they played the Bakery gigs, they became huge.
Success.
It wasn't because they were talented, of course. It was just because they played at a Bourgeois Bogan event.
Oh, of course.
Propelled them into, like, you are the guys that played at the Bourgeois Bogan events.
I remember seeing the presets at that first show at the Bakery, and like halfway through their set, I remember them saying, "We weren't too sure about coming over. We thought it was going to be shit, but it's fucking awesome." And everyone went, "Yeah."
That's a classic.
They obviously had some sort of like
Perth at the time. I guess there was it's kind of, I guess Melbourne and Sydney was so huge, and they had their own scenes happening, and
Perth was a risk.
Yeah, there weren't many, and there were none of those kind of bands coming from Perth or any of those scenes. Kind of
no,
until we started, things like cassette that I got involved with Roland and Ed and Rob.
Let's talk about cassette, because I think I went to cassette more than anything else.
Yeah, that was a great thing.
Did that start as a radio show? What was you
also
had a
that's
DJ?
Right.
You had a radio show on RTR FM.
That was Pocket Disco. That came later on with with Roland and Danielle and.
But you started
Josh.
You started putting on a DJ night called Cassette.
Yeah, that was so the boys, Roland, Ed and Rob invited me to be part of something. They had been attending a lot of the Bourgeois Bogan events, and we became friends, and they had a great idea, and they started doing like, it was kind of like a kind of radio show, but it was kind of released on cassette. So we pretended we had a radio show, and we released some, I think it was 2 limited edition cassettes. And I think that's where the name came from.
Okay.
And so we found a venue, and that was at Cezanne. Cezanne was downstairs they had a Korean restaurant, and upstairs they had like a little karaoke bar.
Oh, yes.
And it had the coloured dance floor, which was, never forget that beautiful coloured dance floor.
I know. I remember going up there with you and going, oh my God, it was like a coloured tile. And the tiles were lights.
Yeah,
they
changing.
Like a classic disco nightclub. I remember that.
It was perfect for them.
Oh, it was such a cool night. I think I remember doing a set up there and just going, this is fucking cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. It was a Wednesday night, which no one was doing Wednesdays in Perth at the time.
No.
And it became huge. I was blown away again by how successful that was as well.
But what a location to find.
It was perfect.
I wonder what it is now.
And those boys that had just great musical tastes, and we just had fun. We just had fun doing that together, and it was a great time in Perth, and it was kind of I remember us getting hassled out by sort of the more sort of indie rock scene as being too seen, which was kind of ironic because we kind of had to create our own events because we weren't seen enough, and then later we got criticized for being too seen and too like pretty and too kind of fashionable and all these things that were quite ironically were the reasons we weren't originally accepted into playing at any of their cool indie gigs.
Scene politics.
Yeah. So when you become a bigger scene, you end up getting criticised for being a scene. But
well, congratulations.
Yeah, it was quite funny because we were like in school. We were. It just reminds me we were the odd bunch, and it was just. It was funny that. It was like the ending of Nerds, where the nerds triumph and they win the day. Yeah. It kind of had that feeling.
Yeah, I remember that venue was stuck in time. I remember the booths were still from the 70s.
Yeah, and you could slide the door and have the sort of private sort of moments in the booth.
Do you know that there was another place a bit like designed that way, and it was underneath a hotel in the city, the Parmelia Hotel.
Right. Oh,
and there was and someone found the bloody nightclub from the 70s underneath it.
Right.
And it was what's his name from Hula Boola, Josh, who started the Hula Boola bar,
Right, yeah,
and
yeah.
DeVille's pad. Anyway, there was a very similar 70s disco, stuck in time, with a huge mirror ball and everything. He discovered it, and the DJ booth was in the center of the dance floor. It was like this octagon thing, and the tiles lit up, and it was totally I think we did as many gigs as we could there until the hotel said no more. You know.
Yeah.
But isn't it great just finding these little gems that are doing nothing? And, you know, cassette. But then I think you moved on to a different venue after that.
So we had cassette for a little while, and then, you know...
Was there a place...
We got copied, and then I won't say by who or what, and then it was a competing Wednesday night. They tried to take some of our DJs, and so me, being who I was at the time, decided, well, you know, let's take it a step up. If they want to be like that, we'll go and recreate something new. And well, it wasn't something new, it was kind of like we just turbocharged cassette. We didn't want to leave the venue. There was some kind of changes. We had to find another venue anyway. But we were invited to, you know, start doing it at Bar Open, and we had 2 levels instead of 1.
I was trying to think of the name. Bar Open. Yeah. That's right.
So we had 2 levels instead of 1, and that's when we started doing upstairs. I think it was upstairs DJs, downstairs bands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember doing a set upstairs early in the night. And that was a good place as well.
Yeah, and then that went huge, and filling both levels. And I don't know, it's just, we were lucky. We're just like each sort of...
Right time, right place.
Right time, right place.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously we're enjoying what we're doing. I think that has a lot to do with it, because you're passionate about something and creative.
But look, I think of those days, you know, like there was a really good alternative music scene.
Yeah.
Whether it was electronic or not.
There was MySpace, which was very important for both Bourgeois Bogan and cassette, because I had discovered that technology like early on, and there weren't many Perth people on MySpace at the time, but I got on it pretty early and set up sort of Silky Crush's kind of alter ego on there, and that's how I met a lot of people, actually, through Silky's alter ego. And we promoted Bourgeois Bogan and then promoted cassette via MySpace, because, you know, the next generation, the scene was sort of people on MySpace, and MySpace was such a great place creatively to sort of get in contact with people that were into the same kind of scene, same type of music. And I remember just really cranking that, like, before cassette, just really sort of making contact with people out there in Perth and spreading the word about the nights. And I think that played a big role as well, because it was just such a different sort of, you know,
I think you built up a momentum from like the bakery and the Bourgeois Bogan gigs, and basically built up a fan base and all that. But I still think that the vibe in Perth with the local music scene was just cranking. You know, there were a lot of people producing electronic music. And this was well after I was running Future Shock and all these, that kind electronic music shows, and it just kept kind of going and evolving, you know. And when you guys caught onto electro clash, and that's like, it's basically electro.
That's right.
With disco.
Yeah, electro with disco and rock elements.
And stuff like that. And I loved it, man. It just really hit the mark. And I think it just really hit the mark with a lot of people and a lot of young people.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you were like right place, right time, and you sort of just, this fan base just kind of followed you around in a way.
Yeah. The cassette fan base was sort of another level as well, to, you know, a bit of a younger scene as well. Roland was really good at sort of reaching out to a lot of his friends as well,
and there was a real sort of, there wasn't a clique, but there was like this, you know, you guys were kind of like a gang, like a bourgeois bogan gang, you know, but I never, it didn't stink of clique, you know?
It was like, I guess, every scene kind of, I think, you know, now thinking back on it, I think one of the influences was also coming from a art sort of scene, like sort of from, you know, Jackson Gallery and sort of the sort of late 90s kind of art scenes in Perth, and then seeing them disappear, and there was a void in Perth for a while where we lost a lot of venues, and lost, you know, I remember going to the Greenwich and Pika in the early days, and
Fuel Bar,
and also Players nightclub.
Players,
you know, they were the early scenes that, you know, I grew up in, and they were awesome sort of inspiration to me, and especially Greenwich. And so, you know, and you know, Jackson Gallery for the sort of art scene and the parties. Jackson Gallery was, I guess, I probably wasn't as conscious of it at the time, but thinking back, Jackson Gallery events, they're big parties. You know, I remember one where Goldie and Bjork turned up, and they had some brilliant themed nights. I think, you know, those events at Jackson were probably an inspiration, because when all that disappeared from Perth, and there was this huge lull sort of at the end of the 90s and going into the early 2000s, and I think at the time, I can't remember, it was sort of probably John Howard kind of in Australia, and it was kind of a sort of cultural black hole.
John Howard conservative government.
There was a lot of venues disappearing, and the scenes, there were no scenes, there was no kind of parties like I remembered, and so I guess the theme night kind of inspiration, you know, maybe I wasn't as conscious of it at the time, but I think it came about as a kind of lack of what I remembered, and also a kind of of kind of what I could imagine as well as what I could remember, sort of you know, and the new technology of, you know, having something as MySpace and being able to express yourself. Even, you know, I was a bit of an introvert, and sort of socially had to sort of communicate through, you know, like Silky Crusher, because I remember, you know, if I didn't have a character, I would have been scared shitless to perform as myself. And I think that also added to the idea that when you have a theme night, you know, everyone can be in a persona, and people are a little bit more relaxed and can sort of step outside of themselves and step outside of their sort of, you know, egos a little bit, with a sort of alter ego of some sort.
Oh, well,
a heightened form.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of the privilege of being an artist, and you can go under a different name or an alter ego, and sort of, you know, create that illusion.
yeah, the illusion, and I sort of found a sort of creative side of that, and also kind of a way to sort of, make the environment more fun, I guess, they just, and, people, there were more sort of, because I had been to a lot of other gigs, and, especially with music, when there were like really sort of bands or kind of, drum and bass. It was really masculine and really kind of like, boys club kind of thing. And our gigs weren't like that. Our gigs were really feminine and beautiful and
safe as well, and no aggro. And
there was no aggro.
Yeah.
And it was, it was just a different vibe. It was,
I think you guys captured a vibe that everyone was kind of like looking for. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I know what you're talking about, because I was in rock bands in the 90s, and then I used to go to Planet nightclub pretty often, and I'd see like Regurgitator, like heaps of rock bands. Only rock bands played there. And I remember my band broke up, and I went to Planet nightclub, and I was holding a drink in one hand and a cigarette in the other one. This is when you could smoke inside. And everyone was just kind of like, nodding, head banging, nodding.
Yeah.
And I just remember looking around going, this is really fucking boring, And it wasn't too much longer after that, I hooked up with an ex-girlfriend, and she dragged me to a nightclub at 12 o'clock at night. And I danced my ass off till 6 a.m. And that's when I became heavily involved in electronic music. It was a real eye-opener. And not only it was like the music different, it was the vibe.
Right.
Like, there was no drinking, for starters. I wasn't on anything that night. But a lot of other people were, did a bit of speed, took a pill, whatever.
Yeah.
But the best thing was there was this this feeling of unity, and just a completely different feeling to the rock scene.
Yeah.
The rock scene was just get smashed and go home.
Yeah.
Or like party out at someone's house.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But it was all booze related.
Yeah.
And then the electronic music scene was not booze related.
Yeah.
It was about the music, and the music guided you through the night, and I had a fucking cool time.
Yeah.
But I stuck out like dog's balls because it was my first gig, but everyone was really nice to me. And I don't think it was just the drugs talking, it was just the culture.
Yeah.
And so I became really immersed in that electronic music culture, and started putting on my own electronic music gigs, and just going to electronic music shows. And I remember the local scene started sprouting, a lot. And there was a group of people putting on electronic music nights on a Wednesday night at the Heidi. And, it's the Heidi. You can only fit so many people in there. But they were good nights. And so I started booking the Grosvenor Back Room and putting on Future Shock and having electro DJs and producers and all that kind of thing. But there was a really good wide kind of gap where we totally immersed ourselves in this scene.
Yeah.
And got a lot out of it.
Yeah. Well, I think the most successful of all art forms is to be able to sort of create culture itself, because culture is all encompassing art, isn't it? It's kind of the creativity of being able to sort of create, like creating your own scene. It doesn't matter like, what, you could be an odd bunch at school. You could be the most unpopular kids. It doesn't matter. Like, you can create your own kind of scenes. You can create your own thing. You don't have to wait around to be invited to something. You can just, there
were a lot of little pocket gigs.
There were
here and there.
Yeah.
Any kind of like vacant space was quickly filled with a synthesizer and a beat machine, and things like that. I remember the Rackabites Hall. Was somewhere where the Semikazi Collective.
Oh yeah.
Remember them?
Yeah.
There were a whole bunch of local people that all played electronic music and would put on like multiple layered shows
Yeah.
here and there, and but yeah, that time was really precious, you know.
Yeah.
And it just gave Perth a new vibe, you know. Perth was pretty much cover bands or rock and roll, you know, for a long time, and then electronic music came along, and really, it wasn't until later when things kind of got like, you know, Nine Inch Nails came along and started inspiring industrial electronic music. Chemical Brothers were, you know, there was a lot that was really seeping into the mainstream, and changing people's ideas and influences.
Yeah, there was always the mainstream, even with electro, and you know, I remember even when we were doing sort of Elvis Penis, that's when I remember there were some other crews in Perth and doing sort of electro kind of stuff.
It was a very vibrant time.
But there was always a different kind of... I think even with electronic music, there's always sort of... There's so much diversity to it. There's so much sort of different kind of... Even within electro, there were so many different kind of, you know, scenes kind of breaking out. But there was a big lull in Perth for a little while, and then I think you know, from sort of late 90s, early sort of 2000s, and then after sort of 2004, 2006, that's when we kind of had another sort of re-emergence of sort of creativity, and stuff was happening, and I think part of that was just change, you know, like you know, we had the first sort of social media with MySpace sort of connecting people in different ways, different to, like, you know, people think Facebook. It's not sort of, at least with MySpace, you know, young people had their own platform for creativity. They could do up their page any way they wanted. They could just customize it, have their music up there, and not be bombarded by
advertising,
you know, algorithmic kind of telling them what they want to be, you know, should be listening or anything like that.
We should bring MySpace back.
We should. I miss MySpace.
I had an account just before Facebook hit.
Yeah.
I had an account, but I found it a bit wonky to navigate, and it was a bit busy, and I didn't. And then Facebook came along, and it was it was a lot easier, and I just went, no, I'm just doing this. But I remember when Facebook came along, and well, even actually before Facebook, marketing wise, they used to send emails. They used to send digital flyers on emails, and then Facebook came along, and it got rid of all the footwork.
Yeah.
But I remember you and I used to be poster ninjas.
Right.
And go out at night and put up posters for our gigs.
Yeah. And that's it.
I remember...
that's how we used to do it back then.
Yeah. And so you'd get your posters printed. And I had this system where I got a big plastic bottle of empty bottle of orange juice, and filled it up with was it like wallpaper glue, made up wallpaper glue, and then pierced a hole in the top of the lid, and so I could just basically squirt the wall. Yeah. And I think we had paintbrushes as well. Squirt the wall, brush it, and then put the poster on and then brush over it. That's right. And fuck off. Yeah. But do you remember in Northbridge there were those big concrete bollards?
Yeah.
Purposely built for poster advertising. Yeah. And so that became like, you know, where...
prime spots. I remember them being the main target during... a lot of the Bourgeois Bergen events.
But did you ever see them clean them?
No.
It was a matter of like getting a Stanley knife and basically making an incision all the way down and then just peeling it all off. And I always wondered, like...
layers of history.
Yeah, layers and layers of history. And I just always remember thinking, I wouldn't mind asking for that, you know?
Yeah.
Where would I put it?
Yeah.
But yeah, layers, and then I would just watch them and they'd just peel the whole thing off and it'd be clean again.
Like a tree.
Like a tree. Yes. But there were
bark off
three.
a tree.
There were three of them positioned in the cultural center, and then it was like Dada's, all the record shops,
Yep.
Planet Video, at the back of Planet Video in the car park. I fucking put posters up everywhere.
Yeah.
But it was a mission,
Yeah, that's right. That's how you got the word out back then. You had to sort of
physically do it.
You did.
Yeah.
Like first time we sort of did some sort of social media stuff with MySpace, but we had to do a lot of posters and a lot of flyers, and that was very important, sort of getting the word out. It's so different now. It's kind of like...
And this is when we were, like, printing was heading towards digital.
Yeah.
Do you remember when printers were charging you to double click to open a file? It was like $15 extra to open a file.
Yeah. Yeah.
That didn't last long.
Yeah,
they tried it.
So weird.
Like, they tried it.
You just have to click on something.
Double click the
charge for that
to open the document to access, to open the file to access the document.
The little charge they could get.
$15 for a double click. It's like,
I remember that.
Fuck off. I'm going somewhere else. Yeah, that didn't last long. But these are the early days of emerging with technology.
Yeah.
And commerce emerging with technology. And now you wouldn't even think, like, anyone who comes up with a policy like that.
Yeah.
Is like, what?
Yeah.
But, they tried it.
It's all digital now, and, even with the posters, you don't see many, postering, or they're not as effective.
Well, the space has gotten smaller.
Yeah.
They took away those bollards, and then there was only one poster distribution company. Stick up. I forget the guy's name, but I knew him. And then a couple of others started, and then once more than two poster distribution companies were established, then you had Space Wars, to put them up.
Yeah.
And so then
I remember it could get a bit sort of bitchy, or, there was some sort of
territory
wars as far as postering and events. I remember getting a threat for postering a bit too close to another competitor, and yeah, it was important back in those days.
It was the only way to get the word out. Like we didn't, before social media.
Yeah.
It was word of mouth.
Yeah.
Field of view.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it reminds me, like, before all of the bourgeois Bergen stuff, when I first ever did a event, I think it was at the Hellenic Club or somewhere like that. But I remember back in the day, we used to, when we'd throw a party, we'd have to, like, call people. We'd be sitting on the landline and just calling all our friends. Or I remember working for the Red Sea nightclub and having to lick many envelopes to put flyers in the envelopes and post them. Actually post flyers out to people. And
yeah, well, I mean, snail mail was still a thing. It's it's still kind of a thing now with mainly advertising and government promotions.
Yeah. But I can't see anyone promoting events that way anymore, unless you're kind of going for
government still do. Government do it.
Oh yeah, because
government love paper. They fucking love paper.
Well, it's because of the they're marketing it to people that are over the age of 60.
That's right,
and they still rely on the post. Well, we all do. We all, like anyone that orders stuff on eBay, I certainly do, and we all sort of use the post maybe in different ways,
but not for promoting gigs anymore.
Not promoting gigs,
no.
Unless John Howard sends you a letter in your post telling you to vote, how to vote, who to vote.
and
Yeah.
you just send it right back.
Yeah.
Remember that? Everyone just send them right back to him. Let's talk about, after cassette, you had Shape nightclub.
Yeah, that's right. Shape. Josh and I got approached to have our own Bourgeois Bogan venue. And
which was the old loft.
Yeah, the old loft. And
in East, not East, was it?
Was it the old loft? Oh, it was at one stage. It was called
back in
Apple before.
No, I'll tell you what. In the very beginning, it was called F. Scott's.
Yeah,
and it was kind of like a exclusive gentleman's club, I think.
Okay.
And it was F. Scott's, and then it got turned into the loft, and that's when.
That's right. It was the loft.
And there was bands downstairs and DJs upstairs. My old band Tantrum played there once. I think we might have supported Beaver Loop.
Right.
But I went there a lot. It was a great club.
Yeah.
Yeah, the loft. But then when you took it over...
Yeah, we did Shape. We got approached by Saren, and we're given the freedom to create our own club, and we got our friends on board, 7-day weekend, and everyone from Bourgeois Bogan to help renovate the venue, and we put in some of the very first LED automated kind of lights, which are popular everywhere. You see architecture now, especially you see it at the Optus stadium.
They're everywhere.
All around that. But yeah, prior to that, we were using it at Shape on the ceiling, and the launch party we had some of the girls from Chicks on Speed come and DJ, and we had quite a few Perth bands. It's a big night, and Shape was just like huge. Like we used to have queues that would go around the corner, and we had DJs upstairs and bands downstairs, and then we switched it and had bands upstairs when we built the new stage, and DJs downstairs, and sort of having both, sort of bringing together the sort of electro scene and the indie rock scene. We had the horror shop upstairs, which was a night that I did. That was my own kind of thing that I really loved doing, which the horror shop was like the indie rock live night upstairs when we had built the new stage, and we'd do up the space horror themed. It was always horror themed on the weekends.
I think I did some projections for you.
Yeah, and we used to use dry ice and stuff like that.
I remember you had black
cobwebs.
All the walls were black.
Yeah,
and I projected on a black wall.
Yeah,
which pretty much changed the contrast of the projections, and I remember them looking great. And I love working with black backgrounds because it just draws the color and the white, the contrast.
Yeah, There was some really interesting sort of things there.
What a playground for you, though.
Yeah. Well, the opening night, I can't even remember the name of these guys, but they were based in Turkey at the time, and they were just staying at a hotel around the corner. I'll have to ask Josh about this. He might remember, but there were these guys that had a projection crew, and they were creating their own projectors. Like it must have been the first like early kind of video mapping, and they video mapped the whole space in 3D, like all around the walls and the ceilings. But they had some really amazing projections for the opening night, and they did it for free, and it was just like they happened to be around the corner and hear that Chicks on Speed were DJing, and they were just looking for something to do, and they had this
right place, right time.
This new technology that hadn't been used in Perth before, and it was like they were like creating the technology themselves at the time, which went on to sort of, I guess, all the sort of video mapping we see these days. But
Yeah.
they put on this amazing visuals for the opening night, which
I think
we're
I missed
very
that
lucky.
one. I don't remember that at all. I do remember that you got you booked Wendy James once.
Yeah.
From Transvision Vamp.
Yeah, that was like a childhood dream come true. As many boys from our generation probably had a crush on her.
I don't want your money, honey. I just want your love.
That's right. And she was awesome. She was just such a nice person.
Yeah.
And I remember...
But she wasn't in the band anymore at that stage.
No.
The band had come and gone.
Well, yeah, the band had come and gone. She was doing a lot of DJ sets, and she was great. She came and DJ'd, and it was great to have a sort of a childhood kind of icon play. It was such an important band for us growing up. We kind of were booking people that were sort of different, a bit sort of unusual and a bit sort of like...
well, they were mainstream, but they weren't...
Yeah.
They were like still left of centre. I remember that video for I Want Your Love, and she was like some kind of like pin-up, dressed as like some kind of pin-up kind of girl.
Yeah.
And then like the drummer was dressed up as a skinhead.
Yeah.
The guitarist was a punk, and the bass player was a mod.
Yeah, it was
it
was pop music pretty much.
was pop music encompassing all the fads.
But kind of, sort of bring them back is kind of a bit nostalgic, and sort of bring them back into like the weird kind of shape environment where, you put someone like that up with, let's say, I think maybe on night, can't remember who it was, but a lot of French DJs. We brought so many French DJs, especially from Ed Banger label, to a lot of Bourgeois Bogan gigs. We had Uffy, we had Justice, Sebastian, Kavinsky, a lot of the Ed Banger, a lot of the French house DJs.
You're right.
Mr. Wazo, just so many Institutubes. Lots of, and a lot of Italio DJs like Alexander Robotnik. We had DJ Assault. Remember, we just sort of mixed it up, like everything from.
Yeah, you guys introduced people to artists that would never usually turn up to Perth either. Yeah, like you were being like really great promoters.
Yeah, well. We were kind of... It was kind of like being a kid in a candy store thing where we're kind of inadvertently kind of mixing things up because, well, there was the scene, like the electro sort of scene, but because I was a bit older as well and had all these earlier influences, sort of introducing younger generations to people they might have not heard of before, but that were connected somehow to the sort of techno electro scene. And because when you're sort of mixing the different DJs together, like, having someone like Alexander Robotnik, who's like really old like guy now, but awesome person, and a lot of the young generation at the time wouldn't have heard of him, but a lot of kids were just starting to get into Italio, and we were playing a lot of Italio at cassette nights. So it was kind of a way of sort of introducing, these classics into the sort of contemporary sphere where these people were just as important to the scene, but maybe not as well known, but kind of to the creators and, the people that were doing the music that were legendary. And so it was great to have the opportunity to bring some of these people over.
But you built a momentum from the beginning, and that's what enabled you to draw attention and encourage these people to get involved. Because if you didn't have a momentum or a fan base, then supply and demand,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're quite lucky that we had the platform to do that, and people that were very eager ears to experience that, and people were, up for all kinds of stuff back then. And I think you can create that kind of environment by creating a vibe. Once you create a scene or a kind of culture or environment, and it's known for that kind of culture and environment, then you can kind of play with that. You can, throw things in that, normally wouldn't be kind of expected. And I think when you have nights which aren't so like very genre specific, then you can do that. And like we weren't kind of, I guess, having something that was kind of electro rock, electro clash, but we also had the indie rock bands. Enabled us to sort of have that movement that we could sort of stretch between being sort of more rock or more electro. And some of the bands, like we brought Young and Restless over, and they were kind of this indie rock band which was sort of verging on being like thrash metal, kind of like death metal kind of vocals.
Okay, I don't
They were
remember
indie rock band, but they were kind of like, they were just like heavy and awesome. But you could mix it up. You can like have really like camp disco, rockabilly, indie bands, metal. I remember upstairs at the horror shop having a metal night, like a black metal, like a death metal night kind of thing, and I was mixing death metal like Carcass and beat mixing like metal, and had like these young sort of metal bands playing, and that was awesome to be able to like have the freedom to sort of
diversity
to mix it up, and somehow there was a certain cohesion to it all that somehow it kind of stuck and didn't seem out of place, even though you're doing these really different kind of nights. And
there was a lot going on in Perth, and it was a good time to just sort of introduce new things to your venue and all that. I just got a memory that I booked your band Silky Crusher and the Sex.
All right.
I did a like screen culture rock crossover gig at the Bakery one night, and I also booked to headline. I booked Bob Gordon's Kiss Take cover band. Do you remember that night?
Did we play that?
You did.
Where was it?
At the Bakery.
At the Bakery.
Yeah. I know, right? Let me
really early Silky Crusher.
I don't know, early, I suppose, maybe mid. But let me refresh your memory, because I know this stands out for me. Okay. So, I was screening films.
Yeah. And
through Revelation Film Festival, I came across a filmmaker called Jeff Krulik. And he made, in the 80s, he took a video camera to a parking lot where Judas Priest was playing in this venue in like a stadium or something. But there was this car park culture going on where all the sort of rockers would hang out in car parks and get on the piss and play loud music and go, yeah. Anyway, he took a camera along and just videotaped this culture, and then made a thing where he would just go and videotape the fans in the car parks before the concerts, That's awesome. But anyway, heavy metal parking lot is the best one. And I got permission from him to screen. It's only like half an hour, And so I thought I'll put this on, and I was kind of hanging out with Bob Gordon at the time. And he had Kiss Take, which is his Kiss band, and he still plays in now. Yeah. And so I booked Bob, and we were like combined forces to put on this gig, and it was at the Bakery. Anyway, it was on a Saturday night, but the Friday night before, the Sleepy Jackson played at the Bakery, and they hired more staging, more lighting, more sound. and I VJ'd for the Sleepy Jackson that night, and afterwards, I had a conversation with what's his name, Steele.
Oh, Luke Steele?
Luke Steele.
Yeah.
Sorry, Luke. I had a conversation with him and I was telling him what I was doing, and he goes, "Oh man, that sounds awesome. I wish I could be there, but we're flying out, you know." And he goes, "Well, all this gear's not going back till Monday, so be our guest. It's free for you." Like, let us use the extra staging, the extra lighting and everything. And of course, like, I booked a Kiss band, and I'm like, this is perfect because Kiss are you know all about the arena, you know. But you played first,
right?
Yeah,
I have vague recollections. Of
this. Well, I've got the poster.
Oh, you
and I booked you and a band at the time called the M16s, which were this awesome, like
I remember
rock band and Kiss Take, you know, plus a 30-minute movie.
Wow!
And so we did this thing, and
that's actually like I have vague recollections about this, but like
look, it wasn't a night to remember.
Like that, those two bands to play with those two bands. I should remember because it's such a.
You guys probably
awesome...
went home because you played to nobody.
Oh,
and not that you weren't used to that.
Back then, we were probably the most people we had.
But Bob was still the editor of Express magazine at the time, and he supplied not a full page, like a good ad with you know, and everything, and so I had like, you know, free Express magazine advertising. But
that's the thing, especially back in those days with events. It's always a gamble as a promoter.
Oh, every gig's a gamble, man, you know.
Yeah.
But I thought I had a pretty good formula. But anyway, I did book your band, and it was a shit night. And but the poster's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely have to see the poster.
The poster tells a different story.
I'll have to get a copy of the poster.
I will.
It's a pretty good lineup to be playing with, like.
Oh yeah, the M16s didn't play actually. They cancelled.
I'll just pretend they did.
I know the poster. Yeah, I wish I could tell a different story. But I remember having a lot of anxiety because there was no one in the room, and I remember Bob said, "Okay, well, just before we go on, you know, get on the microphone and say, you wanted the best band in the world, and you got the hottest band in the world.
You know, I'm starting to remember more and more about this, especially that part."
And I just had an anxiety attack, and I just couldn't do it. And eventually, he just comes out and does it. There's no one fucking there, you know. But he did a great job. That's the other thing. I took advantage of the staging.
Yeah.
And I put 2 white bed sheets up on either side of the stage, and I had 2 digital video projectors crossed over.
Right.
And I cut all this footage from Kiss videos, and I even made a logo and all this sort of. But yeah, I had fire and fucking. It was awesome. No one fucking saw it. But anyway,
some of the best gigs.
I remember you guys played first, and it was just, you know, and I think it was like, oh, we're getting the fuck out of here or something. You know? But thanks anyway, man. I don't think you got paid.
No,
I don't think I got paid.
Could you imagine, like, you know, that's the thing. A lot of people see gigs, or they see the sort of bands play their best gigs, but there's a story to tell in all the gigs that were kind of like the presets, that gig in Fremantle when no one turned up. And you could not imagine that these days, like with a band like that. But, you know,
we're going to start somewhere. You know.
That was actually like, there was some fun times that period, and some that we can't go into. But
all artists have these stories. You know, it's a process. It's a journey. You know? You got to have your flops with your success.
And you just never know as a promoter. Like,
But
there's so many things that can impede on your event.
it's all a gamble. You know, social media has made marketing easier.
Yeah.
You can reach more people, but then again, it just really depends who you are. You know, when I was when I was in the thick of events back in the day, I think I accumulated 1,000 or so. And then when I got out of the bizzo, all these people just just disappeared, or I just like culled a whole bunch of people after a while and stuff like that. But now trying to get an online fan base, especially with millennials or really young people, it's fucking hard because they're already established. They've been liking things online since they were fucking babies, I suppose. Where we had to like really, really build a fan base from scratch. I'm producing quite a bit of stuff at the moment. I've got quite a few projects going on online, and so it's not so much a footwork thing anymore. It's a finger work thing, and
It is.
Let your fingers do the walking.
I think the trick as a promoter is to always, I guess I never saw myself as a promoter, but I think the successes we had were, I think, due to the fact that we were artists putting on events rather than businessmen being promoters.
Yeah, that's true.
And
you took on both. You took on both, but
we used a lot of smart marketing, I must admit, and
your marketing was great. Like the Bourgeois Bogan stuff, cassette was marketed pretty nicely. But
marketing is important, and we learned a lot about it, and the power of it kind of scares you as well as a promoter, like learning, once you it's kind of getting into the minds of people in a way kind of seems kind of devious in some ways, because there's a lot of truth to it, because, there's a lot of psychology in marketing. But, like for us at the time, it was a creative thing, and we were originally visual artists or musicians, and so pretty much for us we were creating art. We were doing fun things, and we were being innovative. From seeing it as a creative challenge more than anything, and I think you need some creativity to be successful as a promoter as well. Or as an artist, the creativity is the key, because you can be skilled as an artist and have all the chops as a musician, or have all the chops as a promoter, but if you're not willing to sort of be creative or think outside the box, then you're just going to be another promoter.
Absolutely.
And I think every scene there's a certain element of nostalgia. Like, for us, the whole electro clash scene was nostalgia. It was like 80s,
but it had
70s.
But it wasn't a cut and paste version.
No.
It was we're all influenced by someone else. But the thing about what you guys did is like you still had authenticity.
Yeah,
of course you were.
Take,
of course you were like influenced by other, people, icons, or whatever, music influences. But you had your own stamp.
Yeah.
You didn't cut and paste directly from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Which is there's a cut and paste culture going on now. I don't know, but there seems to be this average is the new excellent. I can't put it any other way. When I see something with 7 million views and I'm like, oh, what? Let's move on to, after all the cool nightclub stuff, you went back to university.
Yeah, well, yeah, I went back and finished my music degree. And
from there, you basically evolved into a different kind of
yeah, I think I took
musician.
Yeah, I think I kind of go through stages where I kind of exhaust a certain creative direction, and then I look to sort of reinvent or recreate kind of what I'm doing, not consciously, but I see it as a sort of something that's sort of happened creatively with everything I've done. Kind of like that kind of feeling where you just torch everything and start fresh. But I kind of went back to composition and started doing some work for music for theatre. Worked with the French theatre company in Perth like 4 years. Worked on a few projects of theirs. So yeah, I just got back into writing music and creating music, and sort of started collaborating with various people, projects.
Let's talk about Stickman.
Yeah, well, that was a collaboration I did with Stellark. I did the sound design for Stickman, which is a exoskeleton. Well, you could say when it's exhibited, it's kind of like a sculptural sort of installation, and it's also a performance exoskeleton which Stellark, the artist Stellark, performs in. And we met through a project that I was doing through Hellenic Echoes, and a project called the Dedalius the Dedalius project, which was part of Fringe. And there was 8 Australian Greek artists that were involved in that, and I asked Stellark to be involved in this exhibition, and he proposed that we do something together. And so we started working on this idea he had for exoskeleton, and I started coming up with ideas to generate sounds with that. And then I started working with my friend Alwyn Lloyd to do the sort of programming and engineering side of things. And so Stickman ended up being sort of this exoskeleton which can move sounds around in a space, so the sounds become this kind of kind of extension of the body, and they're moved around 4 or more speakers, sometimes 6 or more, well, depending on the gallery space and how many speakers the funding allows for. But so it's a surround sound project, and it's using pickup mics across the exoskeleton which pick up the sounds of the pneumatics and the mechanical sounds, and the body, the exoskeleton, also picks up the direction of the movements, so the sounds are moved accordingly to the directions of the limbs through space, and they put through various different sort of effects. And yeah, that's how I can sum
I
it
never
together.
saw it live, but I saw the video and it looked awesome. Actually, was it at Pico?
Yeah, it was at Pico. The first one was at Chrissy Parrott's exhibition space. That was for the Dedalius project. And then it was at Pico. Then we had it in the Netherlands at Enschede, which was a great experience to just go to another sort of to another country for exhibition. It was the first time I had sort of gone somewhere for a work of mine.
Awesome.
That I was involved in, and it was great to work with Stellark. He had been, a pretty big influence on me growing up as a visual artist, and to work with him was really quite a privilege. And and then it's recently was at RMIT. It's been at Pico
What's
twice.
RMIT?
Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, just recently.
Okay.
At the gallery, and
Oh, that's good.
So it's a evolving project. It started off as just Stickman, and now that's Stickman with Mini Stickman, which is a little miniature version of Stickman, which the audience can control, and then it controls the body that the exoskeleton that Stellark is in, and so it becomes interactive with the audience, and the sound element has evolved over time. With Alwyn and I have made some changes over time, and we look to sort of add some more components with every kind of exhibition of the project. We seek to try to evolve it a bit more every time.
Awesome. It's a great project. It's really unique. But yeah, you've sort of gone on to score, like write music for film.
Yeah.
I got you involved with my project last year with the George Mellier's Rescored project.
Was fun, yeah.
Your score was excellent, man.
Thank you.
Like, it really was. Everyone's scores were great, but this composing and scoring medium, I really enjoyed it. I scored a few short films as well in that project, and I think it just the team I chose were all up for it, and had either no experience or a little bit of experience, but we all became film composers. It
was such a great project to be involved with, because creating a score for George Méliès is quite a privilege, and it's quite a as a composer, quite an inspiration to work from.
Well, your piece was about 15 minutes, I think. Or it could have been longer. But, 15 minutes doesn't sound long, but when you're composing for 15 minutes, it's actually quite long.
Especially if there's a lot of scenes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, if it's just one scene, you can just stretch it out.
Yeah, yeah.
But if there's lots of scenes...
Exactly.
With lots of different sort of changes to environment and setting.
Yeah, absolutely.
That even if the music is like, a few seconds or a minute long, that's a whole new song.
Yeah.
As opposed to doing something very long.
So it's a different medium. I enjoy it quite a lot. I'm doing more of that kind of thing than playing live now. I'm not opposed to playing live, but I think my days of singing songs and a guitar in front of a few people are over. But I would rather work on a project for 6 months, kick ass at the end, and have people collaborate and do that kind of thing. But scoring silent film it's not new, but I don't. And people have scored George Méliès' movies before.
Yeah,
I think Air, the French band Air, did it as well. Did a pretty good job. But that was a really cool experience, working with you guys and yourself, and everyone took direction pretty well. For me, it was my comeback special, because I hadn't done anything big like that, or much like for a few years.
No, it was great. It was a great project to be involved in, and I think you did a really great job in promoting it, and it was such a great concept. Just Well, a good choice of silent films to pick, definitely. Yeah,
well, to go into a bit more detail, so myself and 3 other local musicians scored modern music to more vintage films, silent films by George Méliès, the founder of special effects, and he only did sci-fi fantasy, really, and so then the films are scored, and I installed a marquee inside of this theatre. I created an immersive cinema environment, and then everyone had headphones on, so they had a personal audio experience. And one of our composers was also our mixer and master, and he mastered and mixed everything for a headphone experience, you know. So the process, knowing that the end result was going to be, you know, for headphones, all the composers knew that, so we had more sort of, you know, we could capture moments with that sort of headphone experience that you can't capture live, you know.
Yeah.
And like there's so much gets lost in live.
Yeah, and you know, you're working in sort of stereo field when you're working in headphones, that you can make more sort of intricate kind of little sounds.
Absolutely, the intricacy is the word. Yeah, these little, you know, you can pan, you can do all sorts of stuff, and all the whole audience is having this individual experience, and they could adjust the volume on the headphones themselves.
There's a certain intimacy of wearing headphones, I find. You know, I quite often like listening to lectures through headphones because I find that I can focus better on it. Because
it shuts the world off.
That's right. Yeah. And I think people have taken for granted the movement of sound, and using a sort of controlled stereo environment of headphones, or now that we've got things like Dolby Atmos, which is an amazing innovation that takes sort of headphones, or it takes speakers as well to another level, where we take the idea of binaural sound and surround sound, and being able to sort of create surround sound environments just with headphones as well, rather than having to have 6 or 17 speakers or more to create the same effect. So now the development, like the ability to move sound in ways that we couldn't before, is going to be the sort of next kind of
Where do you see the future? Have you seen the ABBA concert? Like the latest?
No.
Like ABBA re-released and rebranded themselves. Not rebranded, but they're on tour.
Right.
But it's all virtual.
Right. Okay.
And it's them, but they're in the 70s. You know, so they're 70s selves, which makes sense because they can't. And they've recorded everything, and then they're projected as avatars, I suppose.
Right.
You know,
I guess it depends the medium that people are experiencing it on as well.
But it's supposed to be an amazing show.
Yeah.
But it's their voices now. Like, they haven't lost their voices.
Right.
They've just lost their looks.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I saw this, you know, I'm not a major ABBA fan, but they played a big part in the evolution of music, you know?
Yeah.
So they're using technology to tour once more, but they don't actually have to go on tour.
Yeah.
You know?
That's great, but you know, I think that's great for, you know, especially for artists that can't tour, or it's hard for you to go to the thing. But you know,
there's ways and means of getting around things.
Yeah. As someone though that for experiencing things, that I am a bit concerned that people will become more apathetic when they feel they can experience things from the comfort of their room or their bedroom. I mean, it's great that you can do that, but human nature points out that we always tend to choose the safer, most easiest options. And it could create a very isolated world as well, which Facebook did as well. That the fact that you have far more friends than you ever did before Facebook, but you feel more isolated.
Let's talk about Noise Machine, because you perform at Noise Machine.
Yeah.
Tell us what Noise Machine's all about.
Whoa, that's a big responsibility. I can tell you what I think it's about from my perspective.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think it's just a great platform for people to experiment. Yeah, and create music that isn't always the most comfortable to listen to, and that's kind of put in the genre.
Difficult listening, noise.
It's not always just kind of noise. Like we say, noise is something that's dissonant. Not all of it is dissonance, but it's each artist gets 10 to 15 minutes to perform, so it's short and sweet. It keeps it fresh, and
it's a good outlet for experimentation and just doing all sorts
it
of
is great.
things.
And I do have a Noise Machine gig coming up, funny enough.
Oh, do you?
That. Yeah.
Well, let's take this opportunity
recently,
actually to sort of maybe come to the end and plug your gig and just talk about what you're up to these days.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to sort of work on more sort of like just music for film and just sort of writing some of my own stuff.
What's the latest thing you've accomplished?
Well, it's not finished yet. I'm kind of working on finishing some sort of solo stuff and also putting together sort of portfolio of kind of film and theatre works, maybe like a compilation of stuff that I've done in the past for film and theatre and dance as well. I've done a lot of music for contemporary dance.
Oh, okay.
Over the years, lots. And so, I wanted to sort of... I've just got a lot of archival kind of recordings that I want to finish as well, and also a whole heap of new stuff that I started working on. Some stuff that was kind of Silky Crusher inspired that might see the light of day as well. And
have you got Silky Crusher recordings?
Yes. We had the first album that we did, and a live recording of the Moscow Disco event.
Okay.
Which was a big that we had Midnight Juggernauts play at that, and that was a big Bourgeois Bogan event at the bakery, and Silky Crusher performed, and we have some recordings from some of the live performance. Oh, that needs to be edited and
get them up.
Yeah. There's some Elvis Penis recordings that are going to come out as well. That we're finishing up on, and no events as a promoter lined up, but I'd love to have an Italo disco night, and I've talked to you about this before.
Oh yeah. I have a friend who's an Italian DJ.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well,
he moved over here. He was like rocking in Italy.
Yeah.
And then he moved here. And I got him a couple of, not gigs, but just spinning records. And I've seen his collection, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
So I can hook you up.
Please. Yeah, this sounds awesome. So the Noise Machine gig is Tuesday, October the 26th. So it's a fair while away. So, something to look forward to. And just sort of working on some new material, and if there's any filmmakers out there or theatre or dance music, I'm looking to work with people. I enjoy meeting new people and collaborating with people, and I think that's the greatest thing for me now, is kind of sort of the interaction and collaboration, and for a lot of people that are just starting out, whether it's promotion, arts, don't feel afraid to sort of like work with people, because sometimes some of the greatest things happen when you work with others
and push boundaries.
Yeah, push boundaries. Don't be scared to combine things, or even mix things up in ways that are kind of odd or kind of
just push the fucking boundaries.
Yeah,
I think there's all these templates now. You got anything you want to do, there's a template for it. Or we've already designed all these templates, just mix and match.
I think it's probably it reminds me of what happened with painting, where every kind of idea was used, and it feels harder as an artist to create new things. But the thing is that you don't always, it's not like fashion, you don't always have to sort of create something new. You can just bring something new to whatever you're doing, just bring yourself to that, whatever genre you're creating, whatever you're doing, and be authentic. Be yourself when you're doing it. Don't try to be your influences necessarily. If you want to be your influences, then try to combine different influences that don't match to create something new. When setting up Silky Crusher, the thing that was important to me was to create, to get band members together that had very different musical tastes. So, everyone in the band had quite unique musical tastes, and very different from each other. And, I think that's what made it different, was what everyone brought to the table. Meet different people that you don't normally hang out with. I think in general, whether it's creating art or just making friends, allow yourself to get to know things you don't understand, and from that, something,
get out of your comfort zones. Yeah. Okay, man. That was a really good interview. I'm really happy that we did this, and you get to tell your story, because it's a great story.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
There's probably a shit ton of details. Floating around, but But this is why I put the show together, to give the opportunity to people who made a difference to tell their story, and it's been a real honour and a pleasure.
Thank you,
sir.
Thank you, Ivan.
No worries, Petro.
Thanks for having us.
All right, we'll see you on the next one.
Adios.